What's up, everybody? Chester RP Church Devotional Podcast. Mitch brings us in 1 Samuel chapter 1. Let's go.
Cheers each winding path I tread. Gives me grace for every trial. Feeds me with the living bread.
What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for being with us. 1 Samuel chapter 1. We've talked about how Hannah prayed for Samuel. The Lord hears her prayer. He remembers her. She conceives the child, and now we are told of the child being born and given to the Lord as Hannah fulfills her vow to the Lord. Here we go. 1 Samuel chapter 1, beginning in verse 21. The man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer to the Lord the yearly sacrifice and to pay his vow. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, "As soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him, so that he may appear in the presence of the Lord and dwell there forever." Elkanah, her husband, said to her, "Do what seems best to you. Wait until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord establish his word." So the woman remained and nursed her son until she had weaned him. And then when she had weaned him, she took him up with her, along with the 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine. And she brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. And the child was young. Then they slaughtered the bull, and they brought the child to Eli. And she said, "O my Lord, as you live, my Lord, I am the woman who was standing here in your presence praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my portion that I made to him, or my petition, I made to him. Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord." And he worshiped the Lord there. So the baby is born, the great desire of her heart. She weans the baby, but she has told the Lord that I will give him to you, and I will use him or bring him before your presence, dedicate him to you, and he will dedicate himself to you, and he will be used for your service as long as he is alive. Now Hannah here demonstrates her faith. She pled with the Lord for the birth of her son. She was in a bitter situation. Her fellow sister wife, to use that modern term, has had children. Elkanah loved her. He gave her a double portion. He gave Hannah a double portion, but it was not satisfactory. She longed to be a mother. She longed to produce an heir for her husband. She longed to be there and to meet his needs and to care for her son or daughter. She longed for that. Finally, the Lord heard her prayer. He answered it. She receives that wonderful gift. She weans the baby. And now we see her faith on display as she's going to honor her word. She said to the Lord, "I will give him to you if you give him to me." And the Lord gives him to her. And so now she has to fulfill the vow that she makes. Now, we talk about this sometimes, that we hear people say that. They say, well, I'm going to make a promise to God. And the challenge for us on that is, should we be making promises to God? Are they necessary? God answers our prayers according to his goodness, not based upon our promises, what he can get from us. That's typically how we treat God, rather than how God treats us. But if we do make a promise to God, we better be willing to meet the demands of that promise. So did she have to say, "I will give him to you," in order to have this child born? No. The Lord chose in his timing, in his pleasure, in his providence, to give her the child when he gave her the child. That is a matter that the Lord will do on his own in accordance with his will. But will the Lord hold her accountable to the promise she made? Absolutely. And so now she has to fulfill the promise. Lord, if you give this to me, now I've got to fulfill the promise. See, we've got to be careful when we start saying things like, "Lord, if you'll do this, I'll do this." Because oftentimes we say that in order to somehow move God to compassion, or move God to saying he needs something from us, and so he's going to do what we need so that we'll do what we promised or what he needs us to do. And that puts us in the driver's seat. And then we have no real intentions of doing what, right, we have said we would do to God or do for God. When it comes to the story of Hannah, she has to, right, fulfill the vow. Same thing happens in the book of Judges with Jephthah. He makes a promise, and now he has to offer that promise. He has to fulfill that vow that he took before the presence of God. God takes our promises very seriously. And so I love this story for Hannah, and we see her faith not just in crying out to the Lord, not just in trusting the Lord, but also now in honoring the commitment that she had made to the Lord to fulfill the promise that she made to him. And I think that's a very, very important point for many of us. We've got to keep our word, not just to each other, but to the Lord. And if we make promises, we've got to fulfill them. We've got to let our yes be yes or no be no, and then we've got to stick with what we have promised that we would do, and we've got to fulfill those promises because God holds us accountable and expects us to do that. Hannah does that, and she is rewarded richly in the fulfillment that comes from trusting in the Lord. You guys have a great day. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
You carry me close to your heart and show